Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I know it's a little bit late to say Happy New Year, but Happy New Year. Anyway, it is an exciting time here in Washington, D.C., and I appreciate everyone taking the time to join us, of course. It's been a whirlwind of activity in the transportation world. We started off with TRB and CES for a number of our members, and we rolled right into holiday weekend and inauguration, and it is a whirlwind of activity, is all I can say. But we'll give you an update today on some things happening in the life of OmniAir, a preview of our upcoming Plug Fest, working group updates. Then we have a special guest speaker, Joel Thayer, who is the president of the Digital Progress Institute. Importantly, Joel is a longtime Washington operative and an attorney focusing on telecommunications and cybersecurity and a number of other issues in technology. He's going to talk about what the new year brings for technology policy in the new Congress, as well as if the new administration coming in, and hopefully he can explain some of it to us. So looking forward to that. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. One, thank you all for your continuing support for OmniAir, your membership. For those who are not familiar with OmniAir, we are an organization focused on testing and certification for tolling and connected vehicle technologies. We have a broad range of members from automotive OEMs to tier one suppliers, test laboratories, device manufacturers, all coming together to work on building trust in the technologies we deploy in our transportation networks. And if you know of organizations that you think would benefit from membership or you're interested in it, click on that QR code and you'll find some membership information, and we're happy to reach out to any of us, and we're happy to talk with you about that. And for those who are existing members, just a quick reminder on dues payments. Dues, I think, are officially due on the 26th of this month, but there'll be a little bit of leeway through February for those who haven't gotten it in. Reach out to Burkinda if you have questions. Next, please. So we kicked off TRB, was a great meeting. We were part of the FHWA Innovation Panel talking about V2X deployment. I think the great message there is that stakeholders from ITS America and from FHWA, Texas Transportation Institute, Utah, Audi, and a numbers are all sort of singing from the same hymnal. We're all out there to promote the deployment and the readiness of devices for nationwide deployment of V2X. And that was a great conversation. We look forward to building on that and for OmniAir fulfilling its role in testing and certification. Next, please. So as part of this, we have some priorities for our working groups. Randy is going to give a more detailed update of what the working groups have been up to, but we do have some really meaty work that's happening in the tolling and RUC space. In RUC for road usage charge, there is a new J3217 standard. We'll be developing test cases off of that. Our tolling working group is really focused on tag programming and refining our newly launched multi-protocol tolling program. It is the pathway to nationwide tolling interoperability. And we'll be exploring how to offer certification for some of these third-party tolling apps that are out there. I think one of the interesting things, speaking of things in Washington, Sean Duffy in his confirmation hearing to be Secretary of Transportation said that really there are three ways to pay for our infrastructure that we need. One is raising taxes, and he's not a fan of that. And the other two ways are tolling and a VMT pricing, which alludes to RUC. So we're smack in the middle of the work that's going to be important and necessary to pay for the infrastructure that we need in this nation. And I'm just really pleased with the work that Jake Royer is doing and leading the tolling working group, and Stella Joseph on the call here leading the RUC group. We do have a working group on aftermarket V2X devices, formerly known as aftermarket safety devices. Go back. There we go. So we are developing test cases in conformance with the J3315 AVD specification. We will have some profiles that are being developed. We have a framework for that. And then we are tracking the development of something that's probably a couple years out, but very important. It's a J5001 OBU standard. We had a presentation on that at the Plug Fest, and we'll continue to work cooperatively with the SAE folks on that. Infrastructure, CTI 4001 test spec. We'll be looking at sensors And so we're going to have this blended world of RF and non-RF sensors and some data sharing. How do we do that? And we're also looking at network V2X. I think that it is as important as direct V2X is. Now we recognize that it's going to be a blended world. And what do we need to do to bring that same trust of OmniAir certification that we offer for LTE V2X to the more network based communications? And that's something that we'll be exploring in our technical working group this year. And of course, application testing. That is something that we're moving through. We've done a couple of plug fests, and we're really trying to formalize our application testing. And we're working with some of the states on some requirements for applications that should be common across the states. And cybersecurity, which in many ways means SCMS policy for us, misbehavior detection, RSU processing, and some new SSP field testing. So a lot happening at OmniAir in the working groups. If you want to get involved, reach out to Berkenda. You can join on our website or just or talk to me. Happy to get you working on these. Next, please. So we do have a couple folks from the U.S. Department of Transportation. They are doing outstanding work in all the ways to bring together the various stakeholders and move forward on deployment, some accelerator grants, and some other states just using their own formula dollars to deploy V2X. A lot of exciting things happening. We have on the call Justin Anderson from Federal Highway Administration, ITS Joint Program Office. And Justin, wanted to see if you wanted to give an update on some things happening at USDOT.
Yeah, so just a few things that have been coming up. We did announce well, let me start with by saying the most immediate thing that's coming up is the USDOT is partnering with 5GAA and some of the 5GAA members, Verizon, Audi, and Autotalks, to do some demos at the next 5GA face-to-face meeting, which is February, the week of February 3rd. So February 5th and 6th, there will be some demos out at Turner Fairbanks. We'll be showing LTE V2X and network V2X sort of interoperability, similar to what we did in our Wyoming interoperability test. So we're very excited about that. And so if you are a 5GA member, you're going to those 5GA face-to-face meetings, highly recommend you sign up for for those demos. And so, we're also started talking with Georgia DOT about, potentially doing some demos and things at the next ITS World Congress, and potentially OmniAir being a part of that. So, but that's those are still sort of early in the discussions. But that's another exciting opportunity moving forward in the future. And then the last thing, and sort of tee Ryan up or Jason up a little bit here, is we did announce our next interoperability test. It'll be at SunTrax in Auburndale, Florida. It'll be May 12th through the 16th. So our first test focused very much on TIM messages. This upcoming test will focus more on intersections, so SPAT, MAP, potentially RTCM, and then some signal priority and preemption using SSM, SRM, those types of messages. So very excited, early in the planning, but we have a basic outline for the test with some high-level test cases. And if you want to participate in that effort at all, I run an interoperable technical working group that meets right after this call. So I feel free to shoot me an email. My email is just justin.anderson@dot.gov, and I can add you to that roster, and we'll send you the test plan and get you all up to speed. And with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Jason.
Thank you, sir. A lot of exciting things happening at DOT, and we're really appreciative to be a part of that. Let's go. That brings up the next slide, I think. Should be right here. There we go. First time Justin seeing this, but we are planning for a joint OmniAir Florida Plug Fest and USDOT interoperability testing event. We recognize that vendors and some of the deployers really don't want to have to go to two different events around the same time in different locations. So for efficiency purposes, we have decided to combine. We did a Plug Fest almost 2 years ago at SunTrax in the spring of 2023. It was an outstanding event. SunTrax is just a world-class test facility in Auburndale, Florida, located very sort of halfway between Orlando and Tampa. They've just were just great hosts. They have a fantastic field testing facility. We actually use them for tolling testing as well, which is the other half of OmniAir. And then we did a great plug fest there. We look forward to doing this. So the way we have it conceived right now is that the 3 days of May 7th through the 9th will be the OmniAir formal plug fest. The week of May 12th and through 16th will be the US-DOT interoperability testing. We believe early that week we'll have what we typically call our technical workshop. We'll have some technical presentations. I know the last time we had Secretary Jared Perdue from Florida DOT. We had Mr. Capps, the CEO of Capps in town, and then a number of panel discussions on a lot of great topics. OmniAir does PlugFest twice a year. Our goal is to ensure that devices are ready to enter that certification program and ready for deployment. One of the things we'll be talking with Justin about is how do we use the PlugFest testing as a gating for devices that are going to be participating in that interoperability event the next year. And then also, as you alluded to, the ITS World Congress, we want to make sure that those devices meet a minimal functionality. They're actually going to be deployed in this demonstration zone. So that we're working with FHWA and Georgia DOT and others on a successful event. So lots of reasons to come to this Plug Fest. I can guarantee you no snow. It is going to be in May, warm, wonderful environment. We've done some fun things last year. Let's go ahead and go to a couple slides. So this is the ideas that we're going to do doing setup on the 5th and 6th of May. We'll invite vendors to come in and those operating the test benches to come in that time. We'll be doing that concentrated conformance testing, bench and field, on the 7th through the 10th. And then the technical learning sessions, May 12th. And then the rest of the week, we'll be doing the US-DOT interoperability testing, which we'll be supporting. And I think it's going to be a great event. And our goal is to ensure that everybody is ready to deploy. Registration will open Monday, February 3rd. We'll have some really great early bird pricing discounts. Registration, of course, is by team. And our priority will go for testing teams, and then we'll open up individual registrations after that. Next, please. And you can see these are a few photos from the event almost 2 years ago. We had great participation, I think 5 SEMS providers. We had Florida DOT participation, a great technical workshop. You can see some folks from ISS and from some of the other partner organizations that we did. The iStreet folks from University of Florida came up. Just a great week of technical learning, knowledge exchange, and of course, interoperability and conformance testing. Next, please. So that's it for PlugFest. If you're interested in PlugFest, reach out to Ryan Hall. He can put his contact info in the chat box. But I want to talk about one new thing that we have going on is that we are revitalizing what has been our certification working group. This is the group that has traditionally focused on developing policies for our certification programs and program scopes, and all very important work. But we're going to broaden that a little bit, and because of that, we brought on some great talent. Lori Brady, Vice President for CAPS Trafficcom, and also an OmniAir board member, will be chairing the group. And that group, I believe, is starting to meet on February 12th, and we'll start up. But I believe we have Lori on the call who can talk a little bit about her vision for that working group.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so we're, as Jason said, going to revitalize this certification policy group. So we'll continue with what we're doing today, but we want to expand it a bit to just not only what is the certification policy, but what do we need going forward? How does this best address our customer needs, agency needs? When we do, additional testing or recertification, how do we document that and make sure everyone knows? We want to make OmniAir a place that agencies can come to make sure they have the latest and greatest on, where the vendors are, what product is certified, how can they get their hands, on that documentation to be assured that, what they're spending their money on is what's going to work on their roadside. The other things that we're going to do is look at, potential outreach within the community. So, we know that, dealing with IBTTAs and AMBAs, Easy Pass, all these groups, sometimes we're very much on the same path on some of the, trends that are happening, issues that are taking place. Where can we start working together with some of these groups, do some industry outreach, leverage our commonality of even some of the folks that are participating on numerous committees and boards, which also will expand the breadth of what OmniAir is doing and making it more prevalent with the agencies that we are definitely involved. And then we're just going to look at what are we doing today? Is there any other things that we need to be doing better, and just some general policy items within OmniAir. So hoping we'll get some more great folks joining this committee. And if you're interested, please reach out to myself or Brikenda. I think we're going to have a lot of fun and hopefully make this a very impactful committee for the future. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Looking forward to it. And remind me again that meeting is on February 12th, that first meeting?
Yes.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Reach out to Brikenda or just join online if you're interested in joining the working group. Next, please. And we also have coming up a technical webinar from Justin McNew. So I believe who has a CAPS background, but Justin is very sort of looms large in the standard space for the V2X industry. He is the V2X industry lead in the US for standards. And he is going to talk about sort of how to use and implement V2X standards. So that is coming up on the 28th, and he did a great job in presenting on the OBU standard at our Plugfest in San Diego, and I know he'll do a fantastic job. Encourage you guys to sign up, click on that QR code, and look forward to that. Next, please. So, of course, if you have ideas, topics, thoughts about speaking or sponsoring an OmniAir event, we want to try to do more than just webinars. We're looking this year to try to do a few in-person workshops and events. So if you have thoughts or ideas there, or you just want to do a webinar presentation, reach out to Brikenda. She is going to be organizing that full program of activity this year, and she'll be happy to help you. Next, please. So working group updates. We've consolidated a little bit of our working groups. One change that we have, in addition to a new chair for the certification working group, is that we're going to take most of our working groups, with the exception of the technical group, and move those to once a month. We've been working those working groups on a bi-weekly cadence for some time, and we think that's maybe a little too frequent. In between the monthly working group meetings, we'll have the opportunity for self-organizing Tiger teams that can meet maybe more at their pace. We have some members in Asia who found it difficult to meet at some of the times that we've had before. So I think we'll accommodate some of that, and just look for that new cadence to come out in the next few weeks. Next, please. So I'm going to ask Randy Roebuck, just be mindful of the time, but give us a quick whirlwind tour through what's happening with our working groups, and then we'll bring on our guest speaker. Mr. Roebuck, floor is yours, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The working groups worked very hard. We have 4 documents that passed the 14-day working group ballots and got finalized. Now they're in the 30-day IP review cycle, which is a 762 protocol, which is 763 security, the 767 and 768 bench and field BSMs for updates, and they should be finishing probably early February and be board ready approval. And actually all 4 of these have been previously board approved and move forward. In the technical working group, we did resolve a lot of the ballot comments, including the L2 ID test cases. We are looking to finalize the UCAM testing feedback mechanism to go into its next 14-day ballot. And what's important here is its linkage plus the TCI to the SAEJ 5001 OBU specification. So we can go from standards compliant, have it testable, and go from there. We are looking to preparing for certifications readiness for all the recent standards updates for the 2025 acceleration pilots. Jason just mentioned Justin McNew will be speaking on the standards implementation that is open to everybody, where we're taking from standards testing through certification, which has been put as a USDOT directive to us, or objective. Of course, Lori just announced herself as the new chair, providing more of a business and marketing direction for the certification policy. We are continuing our device profile discussion based on device functionality. We've kind of been doing this. We have a lot of learnings, and we just need to finalize this more in documentation. Cybersecurity, they're working on negative test cases for 69.2. They are defining test cases for misbehavior detection, and there has been some work on 69.2.1 to refine the test cases a little more and the test equipment corporation. And we're a little bit ahead of the devices. We would love to see that all implemented and turned into de facto by the end of the year. Next slide. Application working group, they just had a meeting yesterday. They're working on use cases for the PSM and the WDM, connected intersections. We're reviewing the 4001 RSU and the 1218 test case updates. And on that slide, I made a mistake on the number. It should be 772 instead of 752 when it gets distributed. Aftermarket devices, the J3515 just finishing ballot in SAE from their second 28-day ballot. And the editor is looking at the comments, and we basically provided comments from a certification perspectives. In that particular say, we really don't have very many changes to make to the test cases to accommodate this, and there's just a few new test cases need to be generated, which is in works. The Plug Fest, technical preparation, they have had one meeting so far. They're starting to prepare for the announcement Jason just made on Plug Fest in early May at SunTrax, which is in conjunction with the USDOT system interoperability testing and the upcoming ITS World Congress being held in the United States here. Next. Tolling, we starting back with the 825 tag programming specifications left by Jennifer Donald. I think I misspelled her name because there's a Y, because I have two people almost exactly the same name that I deal with. So excuse me if I misspelled your name, leaving off the Y. We are reopening 810 environmental test specification for vibration shock and transit drop per the TS2 and TS2 for incorporation, and we're taking a lot of the learnings we've done the last 2 years and need to apply it back into the document. Road user charging, they had a guest speaker here in early January, Shannon Swank, who this is the one I don't remember. She's the ITS America RUC chair or the IBT
let me bring
chair.
on Stella. We've got the chair here, and let me just say, Stella, I'm going to commend you on just doing an outstanding job in bringing on guest speakers. I think participation in that RUC working group for the speakers alone is worth it. Maybe you could just talk about kind of a couple of the speakers that you've had and have lined up.
Great. Yeah, and thank you, Jason and Randy. And I will use this opportunity to can welcome any and all of you to join our working group. What we wanted to do was it's mostly technical, make it interactive, and but the purpose of having these, our presenters was they brought to us like different solutions, right? What have they done in pilots? What have they done elsewhere? So we had a lot of quote solution providers, providing the solutions that a few of them we have all the presentations. It is kind of exciting in the sense that even though we have standards for the RUC, they have come up with some other innovative methods of obtaining the data, right, from the telematics or from the vehicle, and how they have utilized that to be able to do some of the pilot programs that are in place. So that's been exciting, and we're continuing to do that. We had people from some of the stakeholders come and kind of tell us what they are looking for. Mostly the agencies and the states, DOTs doing some of these pilots. Why they need certification. So that's been really exciting, and we're continuing. And right now we have people lined up for March, April. So anybody has any interest, I would really would love for you all to participate, especially the folks in this committee, what kind of stakeholders who have potentially programs coming up that is RUC based. That would be fantastic. This way, we can assess your needs. We can see what we can do from a certification process. And we are really trying hard to also include the vendors, the product along with the OEMs. We also, we know that the solutions could be multifaceted, that there are product manufacturers who need to be a part of this for to make sure that we have this compliance. So it's been exciting. Go ahead, Jason. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to say thank you. And I think what you're doing is one of the most important working groups we have, because as a nation, how we fund our transportation infrastructure is vehicles become much more fuel efficient. And so revenue going into the highway trust fund from the gas tax goes down as the vehicle miles traveled goes up. Something different has to happen. RUC is really, I think, a great solution. And just a teaser, we'll have a slide on this after our guest speaker, but there's a really great experiment happening in New York City on congestion pricing, which I think is adjacent to RUC, and we hope to have a great speaker on that in February. So thank you, Stella. Get involved. Click on the QR code if you want to be part of a working group. Just sign up. And then I'd like to bring on Joel Thayer. Our guest speaker is going to explain the world of Washington for a lot of folks like Stella and who are out in San Francisco and doing the real technical work, rolling up their sleeves. But here in Washington, we do a lot of technology policy work, and Joel's a Californian himself, so I think he's well positioned to help explain this new world we're living in. Mr. Thayer, why don't you join us on camera?
Hey, Jason, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Fantastic, sir. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well.
Happy New Year. Well, let me do a little introduction, and I thought, so for folks, I'm going to do an introduction. We'll ask a few questions for Joel, and then I'm going to ask everyone to put any questions you might have in the chat box, and we'll get to those once we go through a couple basics. But Joel Thayer is a friend of OmniAir. I think you've presented here before. He's president of the Digital Progress Institute, and if you wonder what that is, that's the first question. He's a Washington, D.C. attorney. He's a policy advocate. He has a really strong background. He's worked on the Hill, I think, for Mary Bono and maybe some others. He has worked at the FTC and also the FCC, where he was counsel to Ajit Pai, the former chair. So he has a strong understanding there. He's led, I think, the App Association and working on some iPhone and Android applications and sort of the folks involved there. He has written about TikTok and some of the cybersecurity threats coming from current ownership structure of that. So he's had a kind of a broad experience in telecom and AI and cybersecurity. So I thought it's a perfect person to bring in to kind of talk about what's happening this year in Washington in technology policy. Joel, let's just start with that. What is this Digital Progress Institute?
Well, first, thank you for the kind introduction. I hope I live up to the hype.
Right.
So So the Digital Progress Institute is a nonprofit and more traditionally described as a think tank. We lead a bipartisan effort in evaluating policies of the tech and telecom space and try to find the nexus between the Republicans and the Democrats and figure out where there are synergies in those policymaking spaces. Because as you know, these policies just don't happen on one side of the aisle. You typically need both parties to come together and come up with a solution. It's really the only way to get things done in DC. And a few friends who actually hail from the PI office, we sat around, we're thinking through these issues and reading a lot of stuff from many other wide variety of other nonprofits, and we just realized that there was no voice in there talking about where we agree. It was always on the dissension, like here's where the sides differ. And so a big part of our mission is really evaluating that particular exchange where you might have mild differences, but overall you have a general agreement that we need to do something. We identify the problem. And, the way we look at the world really is that the way we look at the political world is that it's not necessarily a T-chart, it's more of a Venn diagram. And the center of that Venn diagram that we think is far healthier than others would expect, especially when you look at it from a 30,000-foot scope, or folks looking in from outside the Beltway. So we typically like to bring that type of voice into the conversation, and that's I think why we've punched above our weight more often than not, and why we've been so effective as advocates. But
well, I think that's wonderful, and I know Washington's in great need of people who sort of do deep thinking on policy and not just politics. And the fact you're taking a bipartisan approach to tech policy and well considered, and you've got it sounds like a great team of folks that have great experience at the FCC and elsewhere within federal government, and really, I think that's wonderful. Well, so speaking of tech policy, I in the intersection of politics, we had a little inauguration on Monday, and it was indoors because it was a little bit cold outside. And
I can attest to that. It was freezing. Yeah.
You had President Trump, and behind him, I was really surprised at the number of CEOs of large tech companies. And it sort of occurred to me how much has changed in the past, say, 20 years, where technology is not an afterthought. It's really central to the economy and everything that we do here in Washington. And of course, that means that Washington activities have a big impact on the tech industry, many of which are our members. And maybe just give some general thoughts on what does this new Congress mean for tech? What do you think some of the priorities will be? And also with the new administration, are we in a sort of deregulatory kind of place? Are we in a place where we're going to see some really interesting policies that will help build and advance tech? What do you think we're in for?
So the short answer, I think it's a mixed bag. I don't actually believe that we're going to have this neolibertarian view come back in where let the market reign, and even when you had those types of conversations, tech was relatively young, right? It was a nascent industry, and we were still trying to figure out what are their business models, how are they making money, how are they generating, and they were growing. They were I can't remember who actually said it, but the thought was the Republicans is the party of Uber, right? We want to facilitate all this, all of those companies, and try to help them along, which I still think is definitely part of the conversation. I just don't think that we're in the same place that we were, and I really don't think the image that we saw where where you have President Trump giving his inaugural speech with all the tech companies behind him is actually I don't think it's indicative of, oh well, this is going to be free reign for them. I actually think it's indicative of the opposite. I think they're trying to figure it out, and you're seeing that in the policy. I mean, the president has been very vocal on his consternations with respect to big tech. I mean, whether that's on the social media front, also with all these virtual or vertically integrated markets. I mean, the problem, I think even as your members would probably could attest to, is that you can't really escape these companies if you're going to operate in some sort of digital context. I mean, Google has brought up in several antitrust cases that stretched beyond just the Biden administration that was basically a holdover from the Trump administration. So my understanding or my feeling rather is that we're going to see more of a mixed bag where we're not going to see as I think we're going to see essentially more market-based approaches to these technology companies. We're certainly going to evaluate things in probably a more standard traditional antitrust lens, where you're evaluating concrete consumer harms. And I think you're going to have far more pointed cases, and you can see that in the president's nominees. You certainly see that in his executive orders as they roll out. I mean, there's a lot of them. So sifting through them on the specific tech issue, there's still the concern of the general market power that these companies wield. And so my instinct is that we are also going to be, the instinct is that we're on the one end, we're going to be very skeptical of the current incumbents and the way they've operated in the digital space. But at the same time, you're seeing another area pop up, which is the area of artificial intelligence, where it seems like the president is a little bit more open to allowing things.
Let me ask about that, right? Because
way.
I think you think of like the 2017, the first Trump administration comes in, artificial intelligence really wasn't on the radar. I mean, maybe in some limited applications especially for automated vehicles, that conversation was starting. Now, automated vehicles are much more mature, and we have robo taxis. They're are being used and deployed and out west, and then coming for many cities. And then you also have the rise of generative AI, and we saw the announcement just yesterday with Sam Altman and OpenAI and SoftBank and Oracle and others, and talking about it's a really cool name, Project Stargate. Is that what it is?
Yeah, Project
Stargate. I mean, it's someone writing science fiction, but I think it speaks to the volumes about the importance of AI and the centrality of that. And what do you think we can expect on AI policy? I know Biden administration tried to make some forays into regulating that, and that seems to have, the ground seems to have shifted there. What do you think's in store for AI?
Well, I think it's going to be a strong congressional push over an executive push, and the president himself has rescinded the Biden EO almost entirely. But that I don't take that as a full indication that he's not interested, or that there isn't some room to evaluate specific aspects of AI. I think the core. If you go through the administration, how they think about it, it's very clear from the rhetoric and how they're discussing it that they're keenly focused on China, and that they're very worried about how foreign adversaries are coming in and inundating us with either cybersecurity hacks, or certainly with respect to the evasions of privacy. And also the government's level of control is the counterbalance to that. So I think that's on the administration side. You're going to see that push and pull a little bit. One is, how do we compete effectively with China? How do we make sure that the cybersecurity elements are there with respect to AI? But at the same time, how do we don't want to put a chokehold on AI either. So I think what you're going to see is probably more of a legislative push.
Well, okay, so speaking of like China, and I know there's a lot of security concerns, sometimes it's hard to tease out the security concern with sort of the trade concerns. And so there was a final rule that was issued by the Bureau of Industry Security at Department of Commerce on connected vehicles. And with the Biden administration making a strong push on that, do we expect more continuity on Biden's approach on let's say connected vehicle hardware, software, the security, the banning of some of that from China, or do we expect sort of a new approach, or what would you say?
I think it's tough to say right now. To be fair, we're only a week into his presidency, and I don't think he's laid out completely exactly what he wants to do on AI, other than that is to say, what Biden did was probably, in his estimation, a bit too far. But I do think that there is going to be that conversation with respect to hardware versus software. What are we talking about here? Obviously, Stargate is focused specifically on large language models and how do we view and how you view large language models. That's more on the software side of the conversation. There are things that Congress has enacted since the first Trump administration. So the Trump administration was thinking about all of these trade implications long before the Biden administration came in, and I think the Biden administration even adopted some of those trade priorities with respect to China, specifically with tariffs and everything else. My instinct, the one thing that's now different is that we have the CHIPS Act that has passed, and so that opens up a whole new suite of regulatory opportunities. And my take is it's probably not going to emulate exactly what the Biden administration did. I do think that the president is essentially reviewing. I mean, this is that whole the Department of Government Efficiency stuff, right? They're looking into which regulations are going to work, which regulations aren't going to work, and I think it's going to look predominantly. It's going to look the way I would look at this is I would look at it through the lens of the priorities that he's outlined, and he's outlined specifically that China's a problem. We need to figure that out. The hardware that we're getting in is problematic. Where the chips are originating are also problematic. So folks like NVIDIA are going to be I think they're going to be far more scrutinized now than they were before. But at the end of the day, I do think that there is probably going to be more of a tailored approach to those types of imports, exports. I think it's going to be hyper-focused on foreign adversaries more than it's going to be focused on just generally the AI Marshall Plan that seemed to be more or less invited by the Biden administration. So that would be those are I think that's the president has made it very clear that he has there's a couple priorities he has. He only has a limited amount of time, and he has to focus on things that he can focus on and has to ignore some of the noise. So I think if you look at it through the prism of protecting us from foreign adversaries while also advancing America's gain internationally, you're probably going to come out 70% to you probably average 70% right on the answer.
Well, I like those odds, 70%. That's pretty good. That's well, so it's not just a new Congress and a new presidency. We have a new chair at the FCC, and much of what we do and what our members do sits at the intersection of transportation policy and spectrum policy and telecommunications. And sort of as an alumnus of the commission, we have, I think, Chairman Carr. What can we expect to be some of the priorities for FCC, and especially in the area of spectrum policy? What are some of the big trends you think you'll see in the next year or two?
I think we're going to see more market-based approaches. I really do. I think that there is a lot of let's start with where Trump won. What was it? What happened in Trump 1 versus now Trump 2, and the similarities and differences. The similarities are that we have a chair who was commissioner and also general counsel at the time Trump took his first at bat at being president, and in that there was a strong push for streamlining things like permitting for 5G. There was opening up more spectrum bands for more innovation, actually more wireless usage and commercial uses. There was definitely more conversations with respect to the relationship between government use spectrum versus commercial spectrum. I think there's going to be still those conversations to be had. The difference is just as twofold. One is more of a legal shift from what existed during the PI operation of the FCC to where the CAR FCC is going to be. The other is statutory, and so I'll to describe them really briefly without getting too wonky. One is that Chevron deference is now Chevron deference is no longer a thing anymore. So that means that so for those who are unfamiliar, there was a principle in administrative law which governs all law that surrounding federal agencies, in which there was what's called immediate deference to a agency's interpretation of a congressional statute. Now that translated to that if the agency came out with a rule, specifically if it was a technology rule, it was almost immediately granted. It was very rare for a court to overturn what an FCC was going to do, mainly because many have labeled that Chevron doctrine was created by the Supreme Court of the United States, created. Flash forward a year ago, we have this case called Loper Bright, where that's no longer the case anymore, and now the agency interpretation is shifted from the purview of the agency to the courts. Now the courts have to evaluate whether the agency is utilizing the best interpretation of the statute, and that could really gum things up, not just from from promulgating rules, but also from deregulating. So there's going to be a lot of emphasis on where Chairman Carr is getting his statutory his statutory authority. And so that's on the front end. That might pose some challenges, but I think the things that President Carr has outlined is well within the purview of his regulatory authority. I think things like 5.9 are enforcing things on 5.9 is probably well within the Loper Bright standard. You certainly have licensing structures that he can do that doesn't seem to offend the post-Chevron world. So I think it looks pretty good for him in that regard. The other thing that might change a bit is that there are not as many tools in the toolkit that the chairman can use as there was when Pai was in office. Mainly, the Spectrum Auction Authority has been exhausted. And for those who are unfamiliar, the Spectrum Auction, the FCC was able to really push its 5G plan utilizing the Spectrum Auction Authority because it was the quickest way to get newly used spectrum into the market. And so that really did inform a lot of the spectrum discussions on, when can we use, or how can we unleash things like C-band or other spectrum bands, and how fast it's not going to be implemented, but what vessel could we use? The problem is that when that was rescinded or when that was exhausted, now you're sort of limited to only certain types of regimes and rule changes and potential, you can potentially move things around within the current authority to like switch out licenses or do license transfers, which I think will still uphold in any court. But in general, that is going to cause a problem because, that we're not in the age anymore where, there's Goldilocks spectrum. Well, we have Goldilocks spectrum, but we don't have greenfield spectrum. Everyone's trying to use the spectrum we have, and so opening up new spectrum bands is going to be a little difficult with one without Spectrum Auction Authority, and the other is no spectrum pipeline from Congress to tell us where you want us to open up those bands. So that might pose a little bit of a problem, and I think those are noting those differences is going to be very helpful, at least especially for your members as they try to evaluate, whether a petition for reconsideration or petitions to use a ban in a certain way is whether it's going to succeed or fail in this new administration without those factors at play.
Well, that's fascinating, right? I think it's a different environment and sort of knowing the constraints that are on the FCC that maybe we don't see all the time, but that's incredibly helpful. Well, let me ask you about two specific issues before the commission that I know are important to our members, and then I want to open the floor to questions. Please encourage folks to either raise their hand or put them in the chat box, ideally, and we'll try to get to them. If I don't see someone, Brenda will flag it for me. But just very quickly, so in late November, the commission issued final technical operational rules for deploying C-V2X in the 5.9 gigahertz band. And I think there's a 30 megahertz reserved for C-V2X for ITS communications in the band. And then I think the remainder of that much larger 75 megahertz that was there for DSRC has been moved off for use by Wi-Fi, other unlicensed devices. For a lot of vendors and deployers, they're like, okay, has the ball stopped bouncing? Do we have some certainty that that we can take comfort in, or do we need to be worried about petitions for reconsideration? What's your thought? What's your message to that community?
I think any petition for consideration would fall on deaf ears. I mean, this is a ban that's been litigated over and over and over again. I mean, it's we're talking about a proceeding that started right in the middle of the first Trump administration, and it's been negotiated almost I don't know how many hundreds of times. I mean, it's even been challenged in court, and where the court basically said, no, the FCC has full authority to do this. So I think it's time to deploy, and I think that's what this. I think it's also why the chair, the previous chair, felt comfortable just sending out this order, just to outline what that order does. It was probably helpful, just so that way we can frame the conversation and why it's probably the case that you can start deploying today. Like,
Well, that's fantastic.
so
That's it. I'm going to quote you on that. Start deploying today. I think that's the quote of the day.
Yeah. So yeah, but look, I mean, look what it did. I mean, like the order like promoted efficient use of 30 megahertz of spectrum, and it dedicated like for ITS like 5.9, the 5.9 band, as well as it provides like substantial safety benefits for the American public. It was a balancing act. I mean, so it's really hard to say that the FCC didn't do its diligence here. The other thing that it does,
diligence, right? It was longer, right?
And OET doesn't mess around. I mean, so OET is the opposite of engineering and technology within the FCC. If this had gone through painstaking engineering just to get us to this point, and I think that's why they were comfortable codifying the technical parameters around CBDX. And so, I mean, this includes like very detailed like power and emission limits, and also message prioritization. So these are, from my perspective, you really don't have the same issues that the I mean, for lack of a better term, the dissenters of the FCC's actions had. I mean, it seems like the FCC really did go out of its way to address every single concern. I expect they did that almost certainly because of this change in the law, where you have to validate every single view, or at least make a good faith effort that from the agency perspective that they have taken in all those views. So it would be a very difficult, it would be a tough row to hoe for someone challenging this now, especially when you had a unanimous vote. I mean, this wasn't a partisan vote one iota. There was no dissent, there was no concurrence. So concurrence basically means I agree, but there was none of that. It was just a straight up, here's a report and order. There's no further notice of proposed rulemaking. It seems like this was the final, from the commission's perspective, this was the final thing that they needed in order to get to move things along. And it looks like that's where we are in the conversation.
That's great. I like that. I like that, the final thing. Well, let me turn to one more topic. We have a lot of our members are engaged in RFID tolling. So we have everything from tolling agencies. I think we have New Jersey Turnpike here on the call as an example. We have companies like Capsch that are developing toll tags and readers, and a lot of that equipment uses the lower 900 megahertz band. And there was this little petition from this company called NextNav that has tolling industry a bit concerned about what that might mean, and that rebanding proposal, what that might mean for tolling operations and the billions of dollars of tolling transactions. And just wanted to see if you had any thoughts as they're starting to engage that. I mean, how might the commission look at this, and what might be the best way to engage, on this policy discussion?
So speaking of tough rows to hoe, you have NextNav's petition. So let's just be very frank about what NextNav is asking for. So they essentially want what I describe as an inequitable swap. So NextNav is proposing to exchange 14 megahertz of very low power, limited purpose, shared spectrum, and actually also heavily encumbered spectrum for like a 50 megahertz of full power flexible use spectrum reallocated to an entirely different mobile 5G service. That's a huge ask for anyone, really. And when you consider what this band is used for, and how folks have used this band, I mean, the 900 megahertz band powers devices that shape the medical field, like industry, logistics, agriculture, like utilities, security, transportation, retail. It's so much more. I mean, drones. It's kind of like, if you wanted to pick you couldn't pick a more problematic band that's so fraught with landmines. So I just can't imagine that the FCC is going to look at this proposal and take it seriously. It's also unclear how they're going to use it outside of, I guess they essentially want to use it for a new variation of GPS, but there are other bands that do that already, and they could go, they could leverage that. They can go purchase, they can ask for those licenses if they'd like to. But instead, it sounds like they want to reconfigure their current licenses or swap certain licenses to basically enrich themselves to a healthier aspect of spectrum that is used already by a wide variety of folks. And which also includes the likes of Amazon, by the way. So going back to like the tech oligarchs, I mean, this is a lot to ask of the FCC, and I just can't imagine it being something as easy as granting the petition outright. Even if there is a grant, which I sincerely doubt there's going to be, it would be just it would be riddled with Swiss. It would be an order that is like tantamount to Swiss cheese. Like there's going to be so many caveats to it.
Wow.
There'll only be so many things that you can do. I mean, look who used it. I mean, U.S. governments, like Real ID uses this, like toll collection agencies use this, like security systems. I mean, this is wild.
That's going
wild
to
band.
be that's going to be very comforting to many of our members who rely on that every day. I know our chair is also the executive director of EasyPass Group, and I can't tell you how many tolling transactions that they use that spectrum for. So I think that's wonderful. Well, let me open the floor to questions. I know we've got a few minutes left. Final slide. We want everyone to, it's not 100% confirmed, but we believe we'll have Clint Hawley as our guest speaker, who is the Chief Operating Officer at TransCore, talking about the big project you might have heard of, which is New York City congestion pricing program. It is the first of its kind in the US, but it is being watched around the world, cities trying to understand how successful this really ambitious project in New York really is, and whether it can be replicated. So looking forward to those insights on February 27th. With that, really appreciate your time. Welcome back, and look forward to seeing you on our future working group calls. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason.